student. I'm really interested in like health economics, health policy. I don't see the two of them very much anymore. And my class sizes are pretty small, quote unquote, in the sense of depending on how popular the class is, there's like 40 to 45 students for the popular classes that are like actual core classes and requirements for your degree here at Yale. And then like the more niche classes of just like interest, like I'm really interested in, economics, addiction, and policy. That's one of my other classes. There's like, I believe there's like only 20 students in that class, maybe depending on the day, like 15. Just because other people there's some older students that have other commitments. So yeah, I don't know if that gives you like a better understanding, and I'll let them shed light maybe on like those specific classes.
Yeah, so actually I'm in the social and behavioral sciences department, and I'm a second year, and our cohort is pretty big. It's about 100 students, I think, which is larger than what we had anticipated it being. It was a little nerve-wracking walking into that environment because we were promised a small school environment, but I think the sort of tone that our department chair sets for us, him being super accessible, having the sort of like family-based system within SBS, we were definitely able to achieve that. And I'm not just saying that, the school does not pay me to say nice things about them. But I know that the current first year cohort is about half the size as we are. So I think they've recognized the shortcomings of having a larger cohort my year, and they're sort of trying to meet student needs better and adjust to it. Yeah.
Yeah, so I can actually touch on that, and I think a few of these questions here in the chat kind of pertain as well. Also, please, everyone, feel free to call me Nick. The Nicholas is real weird. So yeah, as everyone said so far, your intro classes are really big. Once you get further into them, and I'm in epidemiology microbial diseases department, so we are one of the smaller actual departments. So our classes tend to be on the smaller side, maybe like 50 with the intro classes. My smallest class so far has been 7 people, so it really varies. But in terms of that first question by Jasmine, taking classes at other schools, I took a class, it was phylogenetic biology, and that was in the School of Arts and Sciences, which is all the way across campus. It was really no different from signing up for just any other class. I don't know if the law school is any different, but for mine, it was literally just a matter of saying, here's my list of classes I want to take. This one happens to be outside the School of Public Health. That's it. And then for the question about epi being split between chronic and microbial, there's a decent bit of leniency in terms of the classes you can take in my department in the second year. The first year is pretty firmly in your core classes and the microbial disease specific coursework. But I will say, like right now, I'm taking a chronic disease course. Previously, I've taken chronic disease courses. If you want to do it, you definitely can. But in terms of just classes strictly, you have a lot of flexibility. I personally am not really interested in chronic diseases, so it's not too hard of a decision for me. But if you're talking about pursuing a career, yeah, I mean, I think a lot of it translates either way. If you're taking epidemiological methods, I would, always encourage people to take more and more biostats if you're interested in anything epi-related. That's going to translate no matter what, whether it's infectious disease or chronic disease. If you're talking about more like wet lab and like, I've done like BSL-3 work and mosquito rearing, yeah, that's pretty microbial specific. But for me, I'm not really that interested in chronic diseases, so I'm not too worried about it. But if you want to get experience in both, it's super easy.
Yeah. Nick, thanks for kind of also alluding to the like taking classes at like other schools. I think I'll say this up front. I think there are certain schools where it's easier to take, a class compared to others. So Jasmine, to your point, there is a bureaucratic process. I would not say it's difficult to navigate, however. So for example, at the School of Management, I'm currently, last semester, I took 2 classes there. This semester, I'm taking another 2 classes there. And for context, we have to take 5 classes a semester. So, in my entire time here, I've taken, I believe, 5 school of management classes. So really a semester's worth of SOM classes, school of management classes, for me coming at the School of Public Health. There is a very clear system for each of the schools that you do want to apply to or go to. So for School of Management, you have to wait until their registration date, which is different from the School of Public Health. It is a later date. So just to, I guess, clarify that. And then you essentially kind of sign up for these classes. Preference does go to School of Management students, but if there's enough space in that class, or maybe even if the space is capped and you kind of appeal to the professor and directly email them, they may let you in the class. That's something that I did for one of my classes and a professor let me in. So again, they'll also work with you. In regards to the law school class, the Yale Law School, which I think has been one of the coolest experiences here. Yale's law school is ranked #1 in the country. Also, I know there's complications with U.S. News coming out recently saying Yale and Harvard not doing that or participating in that. Regardless, Yale's law program is really well renowned. They make it very clear that application happens before YSPH's or Yale School of Public Health's registration date. There is an application for that. However, we also have two faculty members on our staff, one being a dual professor who ends up teaching a public health law class here on our campus, and also has a position at the Yale School, at the Yale Law School. So she's a fierce advocate for us in registering for Yale Law School classes, and so is the health policy department chair. So they will send out to the entire student body when these applications are, apply. If you get in, great. If you don't get in, use your advocates, right? I think the Yale policy department chair and the professor that I'm alluding to, you'll get to know her if you do come here. Her name's Shelley Jabal. She's an amazing professor, amazing advocate, and they can kind of help you see if you can get into one of those classes. So that's to answer your question. Let's see. I know a lot of people are answering questions or putting questions in the chat.
I just wanted to clarify one thing in the chat super quickly.
Yeah.
There was a question about switching concentrations, and I just wanted to clarify that at YSPH we have departments and concentrations. They're 2 separate things. So departments are kind of our major field of study. So in my case, epidemiology, microbial diseases. We have social behavioral science, health policy. We also have concentrations, and concentrations are kind of maybe other schools might call them certificates. They're basically just kind of a thing you apply for that helps to guide some of your classes. So for instance, I'm in the modeling concentration, which you apply for at the end of your first year. And it doesn't really matter what department you're in, as long as you can fulfill the course requirements. And that all of these different concentrations have different timings as to when you have to apply for them, and they have different requirements for what classes you have to take. And some, like the modeling, have kind of a loose requirement of incorporating modeling into your internship. But yeah, just wanted to clarify that there is a bit of a distinction there.
Yeah, that's a good point. And just a small little add, I think you're about to say something, sorry. Yeah, Nicholas and I are both in that same concentration, the modeling concentration.
Yeah.
I'm health policy, he is not, quite obviously. But we can still, concentrate on that. I have my own perspective on why I'm doing the modeling. He has his own. I'm really interested in economic modeling and modeling of policies. He is very much, not. And I think that's okay, right? We dabble in those concentrations how we see fit.
I see a few questions in here about housing, so I can speak to that a little bit. So I personally live off campus. I live in downtown New Haven, about a 10-ish minute walk from the Yale School of Public Health. So grad students tend to live in 3 or 4 different areas. So there's downtown, where there's not too many of us. There's the East Rock area, which is about a mile-ish or so away from the Yale School of Public Health, and there's a shuttle system that takes people there. And also a lot of people there have cars, so it's like a little easier to get around. And then there's also Worcester Square, which is somewhere in the middle between downtown and East Rock. In terms of finances, rent tends to be a little cheaper in the East Rock area and the Worcester Square area, and a little more expensive in the downtown area. So that's something to think about. Yeah, so that's just a little overview of the housing. I know it can be kind of tricky to sort of piece all that apart. We can speak about our specific experiences if you're interested in that, but that's just an overview of that. Yeah. Yeah, so there's a lot happening in the chat, which is great. If anyone wants to come off on and off the mic and share as well, you're more than welcome to.
Yeah, I could talk about, oh, sorry, I was going to answer. There's a question about New Haven, what it's like. I think, okay, a lot of my friends have very different opinions of New Haven. Yeah. I will say that I went to undergrad in St. Louis, Missouri, so anything compared to that is great. It's New Haven, you know, a lot of people will say like, oh, it's a small town, it's kind of boring. You know, it's not the most exciting town ever, but I think there's enough going on and you're going to be busy enough in your program that it doesn't really matter anyway. And if you are interested in doing like really cool, big things, New York and Boston are close enough that it's not a big deal. If we're comparing it to California, obviously the weather, you know, can't compare. Culture maybe a little bit lacking. But I think it's got, you know, a little bit of that New England charm that's fun. If what I want to stay here for more than a couple years, maybe not. But I think, you know, for what it is, and you're going to be in a program, perfectly fine.
Yeah, and then I'll give my perspective. So I was born in Jersey, from South Carolina, like raised in South Carolina, and then I spent like 4 years in Tulsa, Oklahoma, and then I've come here. I'm like one of those people from the South, I guess, who wants to go back to the North, I guess, and just kind of wanted to experience it for a good amount of time. And I also live in like off-campus housing. I'm gonna like hit a bunch of questions at the same time in a second, but I was excited about like being up here. I think the charm of New Haven is the fact that it is a small place. It allows you to like really focus and like grind out on the things that you want to learn and do. And it's really collaborative in that way because you get to really learn about your class. When you graduate, it's a short 2-year program. Like when you graduate, like a lot of people are going to go off and do a lot of different things. And you likely may move to like a bigger city, or maybe you won't, but like the fact that you get to really like be in a smaller place and get to like, you're kind of like forced to get to know one another in that way. So I think that's kind of really special. I also agree with Nick, like quite a few people will go into New York. It's cheaper to live here than it is in New York. And you can still get the same, I guess, feeling, if you will. It's a 2-hour train ride. Which is like nothing. And plenty of us will like go on the weekends to go do that. And we'll like take the 2 hours and just work on the train and then enjoy New York. And then we either stay there for the weekend or we'll come back that same day. Like we'll hit up some museums, eat in New York, and then come back. So a lot of people do that. Food is great. New Haven is actually called the pizza capital of the world, quote unquote. They've claimed that. So there's like quite a few pizza places here in town, all with their like different spin on pizza. It's pretty cool. And then yeah, they have like a lot of different. There's a lot of like diverse eats. And then reeling it back again, I went to Clemson University down in South Carolina. And then for my 4 years, as to why I was at Oklahoma, I did a program called Teach for America. So I was a teacher for 4 years. And then, you know, pivoted again here getting my MPH. And I will be in Boston next year. I have a job out in Boston. So I'm going to stop talking now because I've talked a lot. in a lot of different ways. I'm still talking. I'll stop.
I'm scrolling up the chat to see if there was any questions that we might have missed.
Yeah, the chat is going off, so please like come off of mute. I think it'll be easier to keep track.
I could speak to work a little bit. So students are capped, if you're working within Yale, you're capped at 19 to 20 hours per week. I'm currently working the maximum. I'm a teaching fellow for a course here called Qualitative Research Methods, and I'm also a research assistant for a project looking at suicide prevention within rural Nepal. I do think that we have a flexible enough schedule that you can work and pursue classes at the same time. I do think this gets to be a little challenging in the first term, just given how frequently your classes meet and how exam heavy the courses are. But I worked throughout my full 2 years here, and I think if that's like a priority for you, then like faculty are very understanding about like students who also pursue jobs and sort of cater to that. I would expect that to be the case. Yeah.
Yeah, I've also been working for just about my entire 2 years here, and I will say in a research position, the faculty are very understanding of our schedules, really work around us. Depending on your classes, it will kind of dictate how much time you want to spend working. With some of my more rough semesters, trying to get past like 12 hours really was not feasible. But then once you get into breaks over the summer, you're free to do the 40 hours, which I was doing over the summer. And that's like a good way to just make some money while you're not doing classes and kind of pad things out a bit.
I guess I'll just say this too. If you do decide to work for Yale, you are currently you're capped at 19 hours a week, both in terms of if you do have a teaching position and a research position, if you just have a research position. There's reasoning behind that, and I think this is why Yale is actually really exciting to be a part of right now. The reason being, if you actually work 20 hours a week, Yale is required to provide you health insurance. Funny, I know, School of Public Health. Yeah. Anyways, the unionization that just happened, which was also just approved by the school president, is currently in the process of navigating this relationship with TFs, research assistants, and these hourly cap, and potentially figuring out a game plan as to how we can meet those needs of maybe health insurance or an increase in pay for the work that you do while going to school. So I think that's pretty special. A lot of work has kind of been put into it for over the last 2 years, and it's just recently been approved. So our hope is that our incoming students, hopefully some most of you, if not all of you, will get to kind of benefit from that moving forward.
So actually, instead of typing this out, it's easier to explain this, but is working 19 hours per week enough to pay rent? Is there a meal plan you can purchase? I don't think it's common for graduate students to have a meal plan. I don't think the Harkness Hall offers something like that, but here's what I will say. Most positions within the Yale School of Public Health, Yale School of Medicine, and probably Yale at large pay around $15 an hour or more. I want to say 15 is the minimum. And then as a teaching fellow, if you're doing 10 hours per week or 20 hours per week, those are the different kinds of positions. The 10 hours per week, you make $4,000 for the semester, and then 20 hours a week is $8,000 per semester. I personally came into Yale having saved up a decent amount of money, so I used that to pay for my rent, and the money that I make through my jobs here is able to support utilities, leisure activities, and anything outside of that. So I personally feel as students are always strapped for cash, but I feel like I've been able to manage my life somewhat okay financially because of that. So yeah.
I think I'm going to add to this point as well. I took out loans, and I think
I'm also taking out loans to pay for tuition.
Yeah.
So whatever isn't covered by my scholarship.
Yeah, as I think many people are doing. And part of those loans that you take out, you can use to pay for your rent. That is okay.
Mm-hmm.
It is also okay to use that loan money to pay for food.
Yes.
If you did not know that, I had to get into the nitty gritty of what I can and cannot use my loan money for. housing, food, even like clothes, if it's important for your like work-related things or school-related things. So if you needed to go out and use the loan money to buy, you know, like a suit or like dress clothes, that is okay. If you need to buy a new laptop, that is okay. So just be aware, like our financial aid person, Jen Farkas, will literally like meet with you and talk your ear off and like answer every single question so that you do not feel anxious about what you're doing with this loan money, in order to kind of make sure that you're comfortable while living here, while also going to school. And then to Divya's point, by doing that and using my loans to take care of the needs, I use the money that I make from my TF position and the research assistant position for my wants, if you will. If I decide like I want to go to New York, or if I want to go out one night, if I want to go eat at restaurants, that's like the money I use to do that kind of stuff. So hopefully that answers your question. Yes, School of Public Health has its own career office. Also going to echo Nick's comment of, you know, feel free to re-ask them or come off mute.
Do you recommend a student to go to a university in the area they intend to work or settle in, or can someone go to Yale and plan to live in Washington, California? This is a really good question. I really feel like the school and where you go to school will not limit you to where you get to work after. I feel like how you choose to spend your time here is what's most important. So if you know you want to settle in Washington, D.C. or California, take advantage of the career office, talk to them, see what kinds of organizations they can put you in touch with alumni who work in these areas and start networking with them. But to answer your question on a very basic level, if you choose to come to Yale, you're not confined to New Haven. You're not necessarily confined to the New England sort of states. You can live and work everywhere. I know several students in my cohort who are going to end up in Washington, D.C. I know some are going to be in California, in Texas, and it's because of how they use their time here, who they networked with, and the kinds of connections that they made.
Yeah, and then, I mean, to that point as well, you're coming to Yale. At the same time, like I also will go ahead and say, like, I feel like I'm the last person to do this, but you're coming to Yale, and the Yale name does carry weight. And it's actually been crazy. I didn't really believe in that, to be honest, because I was like, oh, I'm not a Yale student, like I'm just going to grad school here, or just going to School of Public Health. But it actually carries like a lot of weight. The alumni network is pretty strong, and they're like, I mean, we're everywhere in regards to like the Hill or places in DC, Atlanta at the CDC, you know, Boston, which is becoming like a very good public health hub as well. New York, California. I feel like LA is. We have people there as well. Yeah.
Yeah, if I could just throw in two kind of points to consider. I mean, kind of on one side and the other. I have heard from a lot of my friends that certain government positions, if you want to be like a government epidemiologist or working in health department, for some reason, I don't know if this is like just the timing of things, but a lot of them do seem to require in-person interviews, which for some reason, I don't know why that's a thing. It seems really antiquated, but that could be a challenge in some cases. But on the other side, a lot of the really good opportunities you have after an MPH, things like fellowships like the CSTE fellowships, the CDC APHL fellowships, those work on a matching process where you really have no guarantee of where you're going to end up. So in a lot of ways, I would actually say, you know, don't really worry about where you're going, because the chances you're going to stay there probably aren't high, especially if you're going to be pursuing one of these types of fellowships, which sound really cool. And I've heard from a lot of alumni are definitely worth doing, but you have to be prepared to, you know, just pick up and move anywhere.
So the question about if you were choosing between Yale and another school, what was the deciding factor? Personally, it came down to Yale and George Washington University. Yale gave me the most amount of money, guys, so I picked Yale, and I encourage you to do the same. But along with that reason, I saw myself fitting in here very well. I connected with a faculty member early on expressing interest in her research. I had a conversation with her, and she not only seemed like someone who'd be willing to work with me, but also someone who'd be willing to mentor me throughout my time here. I also came across organizations engaged in global mental health work, and I saw myself fitting in that space as well. Immediately, I felt like this incredible sense of ambiance from my current cohort members, and I was like, I can see myself being friends with these people. So Yale just made sense. It wasn't on my radar initially because I really wanted to go to GW, but after the scholarship money came in, it moved up my priority list, and then exploring some of these other features a bit more, I just saw the kind of path that I could carve out for myself. And it shifted here and there because of how many different opportunities I've had access to, but the tight-knit environment is something, accessible faculty, very like nice and awesome cohort, and then just the opportunity to immediately throw myself into research was what shifted me here. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, for me, I was between 3 schools, 2 of which were already on this call. I was between Yale, Boston, and UNC. And something that I also did was I think I had come from like working a job before, so I was transitioning back into school. So I was like not necessarily less concerned with money, but wondering like what I could do given the loan that I was going to get, and like how I could live, and like what I was going to be able to access. I was really, really concerned with like, okay, what am I going to be able to like, I guess essentially dabble in and kind of like learn about. And I like really was interested in like systems and structures like of a public health system, how we've gotten here, where things are at, and how we can like provide the research and use the tools that we have in regards to policy and economics to kind of make, you know, laws or policies that end up pushing our health system forward. And I just really fell in love with the idea of like Yale's interdisciplinary structure. I talked to, again, I'm not trying to throw shade, but like I talked to like Boston school and also UNC school. Boston, it wasn't interdisciplinary. Like if I was going to do policy and law, I was going to do policy and law. But I knew based off of my experience as a teacher, how the interplay of like policy, law, economics, business, all kind of like just like coincided together, to be honest. And so I wanted the ability to see if there was like a management class or a law class at the school that focused on health and kind of get that perspective. And it's changed how I think about public health also by doing that. So I'll say that. And then that's my like alternative reason. The biggest reason also was scholarship money as well. I think as any grad student, while you guys are also navigating, I also encourage you to like narrow it down probably first by the scholarship money that you receive. Because again, you want to graduate and enter the workforce. No one wants to like graduate with a lot of debt. You already have debt from undergrad as well. So
yeah, I can offer my perspective real quick too. Just echoing what was said, public health doesn't pay well. You don't want to be stuck with loans forever. So honestly, and the school name really doesn't matter all that much. So prioritize scholarships, I would say. In my case, I was coming down to Yale, Hopkins, and Emory. Hopkins, part of the reason for me was that eventually I want to do a PhD. And Hopkins doesn't actually offer an MPH, they offer an MSPH, which is more of a research-focused degree. So talking with some advisors in undergrad, they told me basically that if you want to get a PhD, which is a research degree, don't double up with another research degree, round yourself out with more of a professional degree, which is an MPH. So that was like a clear choice.
Same advice.
Yeah, okay, yeah. I'm glad to hear it. Yeah. And then in terms of Emory, it really just came down to like sitting down and thinking about like, what do I want to get skills in and what do I want to do? So for me, that's I want to be involved in wet lab and dry lab infectious disease research. I want to get more experience with coding, biostats, and methodology. And once I kind of thought about that, it was clear that Yale had the curriculum and the research that was a lot more focused on that, whereas Emory was a little bit more broad, a little more interdisciplinary, which, you know, was awesome, but it wasn't what I was going for personally. So yeah, scholarships first, then think about what are you really trying to get out of the program.
Yeah, agree. Switching departments. Again, only clarity there. Departments and concentrations are different things here at Yale. You can't switch directly into every single department. Divya outlined it in the chat, so thank you for doing that. Don't know, some advice on application process. Honestly, just put your best foot forward and give your strongest why. Like, why are you entering the field? For me, I know I've been talking about this. I was a teacher. In the classroom, I saw that a lot of my students had, public health related issues, or just like weren't focusing because of like they didn't have the right eye prescription. And then you ask the questions like, hey, why didn't you go to the doctor or the optometrist? I got exposed to the systemic issues in regards to public health. That's what I sought out. So that was literally like in a nutshell, like my personal statement. So, just be genuine. I feel like I don't know if that was helpful, but
I think that's helpful.
Yeah, tell your story and be genuine. Like, why are you shifting gears, or like why are you going into public health in the first place? Like, what do you want to do with it?
Yeah, so trajectory is really important. Like, obviously, like they want to know, what you'll contribute to their environment, but also like what the school will do for you in the long term. So for me, I walked in with a background in neuroscience and having managed a clinical psychology research lab, and I wanted a more well-rounded skill set to answer questions about mental health. And I wanted to gain like research methodologies, both qualitative and quantitative, and also a more well-rounded perspective of how to investigate something as intangible as mental health. And there's so many faculty members here who do that kind of work within SBS in particular. And then I talked about how, me being an SBS student, but also opportunities to take classes in biostats appeal to me, so I can build up methodologies quantitatively in that sense as well. So just thinking about like what you want to do with your degree, and then piecing out like how faculty at Yale, classes at Yale, organizations, and different opportunities can sort of help you get there. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. If there's like any other questions, I feel passionate. Like this just came to my head, so I feel passionate about sharing this one. I think if you have heard all of our, like each of our stories so far, something I just noticed is like we've all kind of already expressed a particular interest before even coming to the school. I think we already had a focus. Yeah. And I think that has made us be able to like really own our experience here and make it what it is, because it is an interdisciplinary program. Like we can literally take and piece together what we really want to own and what we really are passionate about, and like honestly specialize. And I think that's what like Nick has done. I think that's what like Divya has done, and that's true for myself as well. So I think ask yourself that question. Do you have a very, very, like not very specific, but a general sense of like, what am I interested in? Then I think like Yale is a good fit in the sense like you get to really piece together a curriculum for yourself to really learn about it. But if you feel like, like I'm just so interested in a lot of different things, I don't know how to necessarily like broaden it down. It may be helpful to have a more structured place. And that's just me being me, not trying to rep Yale or say go somewhere else. That's just me trying to say like, I think that was a good indicator that I just noticed between the three of us in talking about our experiences. Which university you went to for undergrad and your approximate GPA?
Yeah, like I'll proudly share that I had a 3.2 in undergrad. It's not the best GPA, but that's where, if you have anything that isn't particularly strong, and for me it was my GPA and poor performance in like quantitative courses in particular. Other experiences can really make up for that. And then you can talk about how you want to use the school and the resources it has to build up what you're missing in your skill set. No one expects you to be perfect walking into grad school. You're there to learn, you're there to build more skills. If you can make an argument as to why, you know, you're worthy of that opportunity and what that'll do for you, I think that'll set you apart for sure. Yeah.
I always get this nerve. Sorry.
Yeah.
I mean, like I said, I'm a little bit older. I didn't come straight out of undergrad, so I worked for 4 years and was like, wait, I can't even remember. It's one of those two. I really don't think either of those makes a huge difference.
I've also never heard anyone in our cohort having a conversation about what GPA they had in undergrad.
Yeah.
So, yeah. But we have a spectrum. I'm on the lower 3 side. Nick is close to a 4.0, and then we have Neil right in the middle. So, and we're all here.
We're all here for you.
Yeah.
We're all like totally different majors too, so like not even comparable.
Yeah.
Yeah, very true. Yeah, I don't know. I know we're like over time by like
20 minutes.
20 minutes. I guess we got caught up talking about our experience because we really love
like
our
talking about our
experience.
experiences
Yeah,
here.
for sure.
Yeah.
I think like hit us up on LinkedIn.
Yeah.
LinkedIn,
please. You can
or I don't
type
know.
our names, I guess. You're more than welcome to. You can find me on LinkedIn. You can find Neil Patel. It's a common name. Try Neil Patel YSPH on LinkedIn. You'll find it.
Thank you for that. Yeah, thank you for that one. Yeah, try that one, and then you know, obviously, you know, Nick, good old Nick.
Yeah. Well, thanks for joining. We hope you pick you.
There you go. That's probably better. If you type in that, if you go on there and just type in, mine is like Neil J. Patel.
I don't know what mine is. First and last name probably, but I don't want to type that out right now.
Anyways, any other questions? Any last minute questions before we hop off?